All right. Welcome back to the Draft Podcast, presented by the Gem City Sports Podcast Network, your local source for serious NFL draft evaluation. I'm Paul Adamczak, and now that the Combine is behind us and free agency has officially kicked off, the draft conversation has started to change a little bit. Now, before we get started, a quick programming note. I know I said last week that tonight would be our first mock draft episode. We're going to push that back 1 week. Free agency just opened. Teams are reshaping their rosters in real time, and honestly, it makes a lot more sense to just give that another week to settle before we start building that board. So the mock draft is coming next week. Tonight, we're focusing on two of the most interesting position groups in this class. So for the past few months, we've been talking about traits, testing numbers, projections, trying to understand what these players are physically capable of becoming at the next level. But this time of year is when the league itself starts reshaping the board. Teams will plug their roster holes in March, money gets spent, veterans move around, and suddenly the draft stops being hypothetical. We start asking the real question: where do teams actually need help? And when you zoom out across the league right now, two position groups keep jumping off the page: cornerback and wide receiver. Those are the two spots where teams are constantly hunting for answers because the modern NFL is built around space. Think about it. Offenses are spreading the field. Quarterbacks are throwing more screens than ever. Defensive coordinators are asking corners to cover elite athletes on an island 60-plus snaps a game. And at the same time, offenses are looking for more weapons than ever before as well. If you don't have multiple receivers who can separate, who can stress coverages, who can create explosive plays, well, it's almost impossible to keep up with the best offenses in the league. So tonight, I want to focus on what I think are two of the most important and interesting position groups in the entire 2026 draft class. We're going to run through my top 10 cornerbacks and my top 10 wide receivers, broken into tiers, because once you get past the first few names, the differences become more about role than raw ranking. So I want to start on the defensive side with the TDP top 10 cornerbacks, okay? So as we look at this, corner is one of the hardest positions in football to evaluate because the margin for error at that position is so small. For example, like a wide receiver can lose a rep, and then he can lose the next rep, and he can lose for a couple of quarters. But if he can still have a great day, because if he catches one touchdown in the fourth quarter, it's he's a god. He caught it. He had a 72-yard catch. Well, that was the only one. Doesn't matter. It was a great day. If a cornerback loses a rep, it's on the scoreboard. So when you look at corners, the traits I care about most are movement ability, composure in coverage, and recovery, the ability to recover. You can't win every rep, but you have to be able to survive the ones where things go wrong. And that starts us with our tier 1 potential CB1s. That's the number one corner on teams. Outside guy. He's the one who takes away the other team's X receiver. And I got to be honest, my top 3 probably mirror any other top 3 lists that you're looking at. And I'm talking about number 1, Mansour Delane from LSU. He measured in at 6 foot, 187 pounds. He's very smooth. He's a balanced cover corner with excellent route recognition and the ability to stay in phase without all the habeas grabus, which leads to defensive pass interference and huge gains without receivers doing anything. He rarely looks stressed in coverage and projects as a dependable, high-end outside starter. And one note I wanted to make on Mansour Delane, he played through an abdominal injury in 2025 and was still elite. So I think the cap on him is unlimited. Now, I will say, the only question I have, when he was at the Combine, he measured at 6 foot, $187. But all 6 foot, $187 is not built the same. He's a little small. Now, he's super twitchy. And again, I thought he was awesome. Even, kind of playing, not on one leg, but like without your core. Have you ever tried to sit up without using your abdominals? Have you ever tried to run without using your abdominals? It's damn near impossible. And he had a core injury and was able to play through it. So I'm not worried about the athleticism. I'm just kind of worried about that press one-on-one with receivers bigger than him. But overall, tremendous receiver, tremendous balance. He's CB1. Number 2, Jamad McCoy from Tennessee. And there's some red flags with this, but the ceiling is the ceiling. Now, he measured it at the combine. He only did one event. He measured in an Indianapolis at 6'1", 188 pounds. Good size, long, fluid, very confident at the catch point. You love the way this guy plays. He's got size. He's got the recovery speed. Teams want on the boundary. When we last saw him in 24, and flashes the kind of traits that translate well to press heavy schemes. We talk about the length, and the only event he did at the combine was he did the bench press, and he repped 225 pounds 14 times, which is very good for a corner. The red flag is, obviously, we didn't see him at all last year. He tore his ACL late in 2024, was out all of last season, hasn't participated in anything, didn't do anything testing-wise at the combine, like I said, outside of the bench press. So with the torn ACL, I can't move him off of 2 because the 24 tape is awesome. It may take all of 26 before he's right. 2027, I look as Jamad McCoy is just as physically talented as Mansour Delane, but I can't put him above Mansour because Delane is healthy. So Jamad McCoy is my CB2. At number 3, and the last CB1 in this tier 1 is Avion Terrell out of Clemson, 5'11", 186 pounds. One of, if not the most instinctive corner in this year's class. Quick feet, ability to mirror, allow him to stay attached through all the breaks. Something else you love is his competitiveness. It shows up consistently on the tape and at the catch point. And of course, we know his brother AJ was a first-round pick of Atlanta back in 2020, so he's got the NFL bloodline in there as well. And another guy who didn't do testing at the combine, but he did do the bench press, where I said 14 reps by Jamad McCoy was impressive. Terrell did 17. So giving up a little bit of size to McCoy, who I know can play press, Terrell actually surprised me. 17 reps, I would have been fine with 10, and he nearly doubled that. So that's a real feather in his cap. So that rounds out our top 3 corners. Mansour Delane out of LSU, Jamad McCoy out of Tennessee, who did not play in 2025, and Avion Terrell out of Clemson. That moves us down into tier number 2. I'm calling these day 2 starters. I don't know if any of these guys are round 1 guys, but I do think these guys are starters who could realistically go in the top 75 picks. I'm not ready to say all round 2 guys, but these are top 75 players, or day 2. And at number 4, and this is where I start to deviate from the general consensus, if you will, I have D'Angelo Pons out of Indiana, 5'9", 182 pounds, one of the best pure cover players in the class. Quickness and anticipation allow him to disrupt routes early and close throwing windows quickly. And the big thing I wrote down next to his name was Brent Grimes. That comparison keeps coming up in my mind. Brent Grimes was an undersized corner out of Shippensburg University. Just an athletic freak. And Pons is no slouch. He was actually the number 1 defensive back at the combine in the vertical jump. He jumped 43.5 inches. And again, he's only 5'9". So we have a lot of explosiveness in a real compact player. And again, you see him at the combine. Yeah, he's small in stature, but he's thickly built. So I think he's going to be just fine in the NFL. Throughout the season, every week it was, well, Pons is Indiana's number 1 corner, but can he hold up against, name the receiver? And he did it all the way through the national championship. That Miami receiver, whose name is escaping me at the moment, he's a round 1 pick in a couple of years. It was only a freshman, and Pons didn't eliminate him, but when he was on him, he gave him all he could handle. So Pons is going to be a good NFL player. I'm confident in that. I have him ranked as my 4th corner. At number 5 in tier 2, I have Chris Johnson San Diego State corner, 6 foot, 193 pounds, scheme versatile, rarely penalized in college, capable of playing inside or outside, able to mirror routes smoothly. He stays disciplined through transitions and competes aggressively at the catch point. Didn't have a great week in Mobile at the Senior Bowl, but he came back with an awesome combine. He ran 4.40 in the 40. He jumped 38 inches in the vertical. He did 17 reps on the bench. The tape is good, and all the athletic testing came back good. I put him in my top 5. I'm convinced this guy's going to be a starter level cornerback at the next level. At number 6, I have Malik Muhammad out of Texas. I like this guy. I didn't watch him much last year, didn't really know the name. The name that started coming up when the draft season sort of started coming around. You watch him a little bit more, and I really like him. 6 foot, 182 pounds. He's right in that range of corner size. Aggressive outside corner, thrives in physical coverage, which is what I like a lot about him. He's got good length. He plays with a good amount of toughness, and that allows him to challenge receivers at the line and on contested throws downfield. You talk about some of the combine measurables, 4.42 in the 40, nearly 40 inches in the vertical. He jumped 39, and a broad jump of 10 feet, 10 inches. That puts him solidly in the above average athletic range requisite at that position. And like I said, I love the physicality. Would love to have put him in my top 5, and I think a lot of people do have him in their top 5, but I'm higher on Chris Johnson and D'Angelo Pons, and that moves a talented player like Malik Muhammad down to number 6 in my top 10 corners available in this draft. And finally, in the last slot in my tier 2, and this is where I start to get off the beaten path. I have Tacario Davis out of Washington. 6'4", 194 pounds. Ran 4.41 in the 40. He's got 33 3/8 inch arms. When you scout the profile of a cornerback, he has rare size, rare length, and outstanding recovery speed. This is a height, weight, speed guy. He's going to get drafted based on the measurables, and I say there's no way he gets outside of pick 75. He's a guy who can disrupt receivers early with the reach and has the athletic ability proven to stay attached vertically. So I was on this guy early. I thought he had a fantastic combine, and he's solidly in my top 10, and I have him as a tier 2 guy. I legitimately see this guy as an early NFL starter. Number 7 overall in my top 10. Finally, I get down to tier 3. These are role-specific contributors. I think they're probably nickel corners. They are specific matchup corners. And some of these guys who are just going to need to be scheme fits who can still play early. At number 8 in my top 10, I have Colton Hood, maybe the other guy out of Tennessee. Had a great year. Sort of forgotten about because obviously Jermon McCoy kind of came into the air as the number 1 corner. And Colton Hood really, he took that, he didn't take that laying down. 6 foot, 193 pounds, physical corner, plays with excellent awareness in both man and zone. Another guy who shows toughness and instincts. He's a reliable defender who rarely looks out of position. Had a really nice year at Tennessee. The physicality, as I said, shows up in run support. He plays almost like an extra safety, which is why I have him in a nickel role. Physically capable at the NFL level, 4.44 in the 40. Kind of reminds you of what was this? Moses Malone, faux. And a vertical jump over 40 inches at 40.5. So a tremendous athlete with good tape, still in the top 10. I think this is certainly a day 2 guy, and certainly challenges for a starting role early on in his career. At number 9 in tier 3, Brandon Sissy out of South Carolina, 6 foot, 189 pounds. Didn't run the 40 or any of the speed drills, but what he did at the combine, only 2 tests, he did awesome at. He jumped the broad, 10 foot 11, just shy of that 11-foot marker, and he was over 40 inches with a 41-inch vertical jump. Another tough, competitive defender, strong ball skills, reliable tackler. I think the physicality and instincts give him the tools to contribute early in the secondary. I have him at number 9. I've seen mocks that have him as high as number 4 or 5. So lot of lot of leeway in this draft where people have guys ranked. I'm not. I have him at 9. That's not to say I'm low on him. That's just to say I'm higher on other players. So I think if you're getting Brandon Sissy in round 2 or round 3, you have a starting level corner that you can draft. Like I said, top 75 picks, top 90 picks. What are the compensatory picks get us to this year? They handed those out the other day. There's a couple of third rounders, but I think even the compensatory picks in the third round, you're picking top 100. You're getting a starting corner in the top 100 picks. I think it's awesome. It just shows the depth of this year's corner class. My 10th corner, it was tough because I have 4 guys who I was kind of going back and forth in between, and I'm going to ride or die with my Duke guy here, Chandler Rivers, 5'9.5", 185 pounds, quick, fluid athlete, excellent change of direction ability. His movement skills and competitiveness make him an ideal fit for slot-heavy defensive schemes. And I look at the testing numbers. 10-10 in the broad jump, 39-inch vertical, 4.4 flat in the 40. Do I have a type? I do. They're just under 6 feet tall. They're around 190 pounds. They're fast as hell, and they can jump out of the building. That's what I want in a corner. That's what teams want in a corner. So that's my top 10. Let's go back through it real quick. Mansour Delane, Jermod McCoy, Avion Terrell, D'Angelo Pons, Chris Johnson, Malik Muhammad, Takario Davis, Colton Hood, Brandon Sissy, and Chandler Rivers. And the guys who just missed the cut, Davison Igbinosun out of Ohio State, Damani Jackson out of Alabama. Not great tape, but I love the athlete. And Charles Demings, an athletic freak out of Stephen F. Austin. He tested really well at the combine. Might take some time to transition to the NFL technique-wise, but boy, oh boy, are you getting an A-plus athlete with Charles Demings. All right, now if corners are responsible for stopping explosive plays, then the next group we're about to talk about is responsible for creating them, right? So these are my top 10 wide receivers. The modern NFL offense is built around explosive plays and separation, right? The best teams in the league don't just have one receiver who could win. They have multiple guys who can stress coverage. This year's class has rare depth and variety at the position. If you're looking for a wide receiver, if you're a wide receiver needy team, cough, cough, the Cleveland Browns, you've got true outside receivers, explosive slot players, and a handful of guys who can move around the formation and create matchup problems. This year is a truly unique year for wide receivers. And I'm going to do this sort of the same way. I have tiers. And tier 1 are the potential wide receiver ones. And again, my top 3 don't really deviate from the norm. Maybe the order, but it's the same 3 you were expecting. These guys are the X's. These are the alphas. These are wide receiver ones. This is a guy that teams are going to have to take early and expect them to step in and take on the opposing defense's number 1 cornerback. Expect to separate from the best athlete in space on the other side of the field. And I think these guys, these top 3 are the best equipped this year to do it. So my number 1 receiver in 2026, I said earlier, was going to be Carnell Tate. I no longer believe that. The testing numbers were good, not great. I couldn't put a non-physical freak at number 1. I may regret this later, but I'm looking at upside. I'm looking at potential ceiling, not floor. And I have Jordan Tyson out of Arizona State. 6'2", 203 pounds, a complete receiver with size, body control, and route running polish to win at all 3 levels. This is a guy that consistently creates separation and finishes through contact. A lot of people say Deebo Samuel. I don't see Deebo Samuel. He can do a lot of the same things as Deebo Samuel, and I thought that I thought that comp made a lot more sense going into the season because before this past season, Jordan Tyson had a drops problem, and Deebo Samuel's entire career has been about sort of big drops at inopportune times. Jordan Tyson erased that this year. He had like a 0.8% drop rate. It was the big thing. It was the big red flag coming in on the season for him. And I thought he did just an excellent job between 24 and 25, making sure that his hands, the thing that's going to get him paid, were elite level, top shelf, top of the line. And I thought he did a great job at that. Jordan Tyson's a guy who can line up inside, outside. You can line him up in the backfield. You can throw him the ball down the field. You can throw him screens. You can hand it off to him at running back. And he's a guy that just moves well in space. Like I said, he's over 200 pounds. He's at 6'2". He's not a diminutive receiver. He's well built, and he's just as good after the catch as he is in the route. So Jordan Tyson out of Arizona State is my number one receiver. My number two receiver, not far behind, and who's going to have an excellent NFL career, much like his teammate from last year, Emeka Egbuka. My wide receiver two this year is Carnell Tate out of Ohio State, former 5-star guy, 6'2", 192 pounds, one of the most reliable receivers we've seen come out, and he certainly is in this class as well. He combines precise route running with natural hands and strong body control, projecting as a high floor outside target. And that's kind of where the difference between Tyson and Tate is to me. The floors are both high. I think the ceiling is higher for Tyson. That is not a nitpick on Tate. I think the difference was Tate ran that 4.61, which is not slow. It's not slow. He's just not a burner. If the difference between 4.59 and 4.61 might just be mental, but that's it, man. I'm telling you, that's it. So he's my wide receiver two, and not by much. Can we say 1A? No, because then that screws up the rest of the board. So he's 2. Wide receiver 3 in tier 1. He's still going to be the best receiver on whatever team he's on, most likely because of his draft position. But he fell out of that 1-2 ranking for me based on the interviews at the Combine. I couldn't knock him out of the top 3 because, listen, man, wide receivers are divas. Like they're just built different. They're wired different. And I'm speaking, of course, of Micaiah Lemon out of USC, 5'11", 192 pounds. He was the Fred Biletnikoff Award winner this past season for best receiver in the country. Somewhat argumentatively, there were a lot of people who said he didn't deserve it, but the tape is so good. He's an explosive separator, elite accelerator, and another guy who's awesome after the catch. Very sudden. The route tempo consistently put defenders in conflict. He's a hard cover. And the comp that keeps coming up is not Equanimous St. Brown, but Amon-Ra St. Brown from the Detroit Lions. I think he's a little bit slimmer than St. Brown, but they move in sort of the same way. The interviews were off-putting. They weren't eliminating. Wide receivers are different. Like, go watch any interview with Stephon Diggs. He's a weird dude. He's an awesome football player. He's just a weird dude. And I think Micaiah Lemon is sort of the same way. Now, he's not crazy like Brandon Marshall was. He's just a different cat. And he went to USC, so he's in Southern California. It's just a different place. He's a hell of a football player. It's just sort of it's the personality that to me puts him behind Carnell Tate, who's very clean and polished, and Jordan Tyson, who's very clean and polished and a little bit bigger than both these guys. So Tyson, Tate, Lemon. That's the order that I think they get drafted in. That's the order that I think they will be as NFL players. And that's tier 1. Tier 2 is where we start to get interesting and probably where I deviate from the norm. But these are my favorite receivers and sort of the same thing. These are strong day 2 guys. I can totally see Let me see. 1, 2, 3. I've got 4 guys in my tier 2. I can legitimately see an argument for any of these 4 guys to be taken in round 1. The reason I have them outside of round 1 is really not any of their fault. It's because this is such a strong class. Receivers 8, 9, 10, and I have 11, 12, 13. I have 14 guys just listed. I'm only going to give you my top 10 and with a breakdown, but I've got 4 more who were top 10 worthy. You can have 14, 15 guys taking the top 100 picks, and that kind of devalues the position a little bit, because why would I maybe reach at 28 when I can get a guy that I also like at 45 who's the same player, right? So it kind of goes to value. So wide receiver 4, the top receiver in my tier 2, receivers with clear starting traits who should come off the board early, is Casey Concepcion out of Texas A&M. 6 foot, 196 pounds. I would describe him as a versatile offensive weapon who can line up all over the formation. Also gives you plus in special teams. He's a punt returner, kick returner. You're not drafting him for those, but he has the ability to do it. Concepcion's burst and playmaking ability make him dangerous after the catch. The route running isn't super pushed, but he's such an elite separator, and he's so sudden that, like I said, you could put him outside, you could put him inside. He's a guy that you could throw him like Puka numbers. You can throw him the ball 10, 12, 14 times a game and try to get him the ball in so many different ways. He's such a weapon, and I love him after the catch. He's not huge. He's 6 foot tall. He's under 200 pounds, so he's not a huge guy doing all this stuff. He's a little slight, but I just think he's a volume receiver. I think he's a 100-catch guy who can make plays all over the field. He's a guy who turns a 5-yard catch, makes the first guy miss, and all of a sudden he's 12, 15 yards downfield. Love a guy like that. I'd love Casey Concepcion on my team. He's my wide receiver 4. Wide receiver 5, just behind him, is that classic long strider giraffe, Chris Brazzell II, out of Tennessee, 6'4", 198 pounds. Call him a one-trick pony, but it's a hell of a trick. He is a long, lean, vertical threat with the speed to stretch defenses deep. Brazzell wins by stacking corners and tracking the ball well downfield. Tennessee receivers, they come out with a stigma that they're not asked to do much. Here's your route tree. It's 3 routes. Be really good at them. And then they're kind of behind the learning curve once you get to the NFL. That's fair. And I think Brazzell, he did what he was asked. Could he have been asked to do more? I would have liked that. But out of all the Tennessee receivers that we've seen recently, I think he's the most fluid. And it helps that when you watch the tape, you see a very sudden receiver with great hands. He catches the ball out of the air. He plucks it with his hands. He's not a body catcher. But then you realize, he's 6'4", 200 pounds. Like, he's got good size to him. So he's not going to lose in press against that big number 1 corner that the other team has. Their top draft pick on the other side of the ball. I think he's smooth. I think he's strong. I think he stretches the field. I think he allows you to win with math. If you have to take a corner and he wins that one-on-one, and you have to then move your safety out over top of him, now you've got a 2-on-1, and you can take some of that space that the safety then had to vacate to top Brazzell and maybe throw it to a different guy like a Concepcion or something who now has space and only has one guy to make miss. So I think Brazzell has a clear role. I think he's going to be very, very good at it the next level. And I think the ceiling is there that we haven't even seen all of what he's capable yet. So that's my top 5. Still in tier 2, just outside the top 5. Didn't test great, but I love the tape. Denzel Boston out of Washington, 6'4", 212 pounds. This is your physical X boundary receiver with the large catch radius and a strong contested catch record and ability. Again, this is your traditional mold. Go to Central Casting and find me a traditional X professional wide receiver. You might come away with Denzel Boston. His dad, David, played in the NFL for a long time. He was a physical possession receiver. If you watch the Washington tape, it's kind of amazing he didn't have better numbers than he did. He was kind of, on a lot of plays, the read is predetermined. And I always used to tell receivers, like, sometimes you're the mouse, sometimes you're the cheese. Not all plays are designed for you to get the ball. But it looked like on a lot of plays that Denzel Boston was not designed to get the football. If you would have just thrown it his way anyway, he would have been a better option than what they ended up going with. They did not have a great quarterback play out there in Washington this year, which is unfortunate. But he was a great watch if you go back and look at the tape. And again, he's just so big, and some of the guys that he's playing against, he will see smaller matchups at the NFL level. Not every team has 6'4", 200-pound defensive backs for him to contend with. If you listen to my top 10 corner list, only one of them was over 6'2", and I don't know if any of them were over 200 pounds. So he's going to have a physical advantage most reps, and he's got great, big, strong hands that I think the workout numbers in Indianapolis were not great. But again, they are not the be-all, end-all of NFL careers. Denzel Boston is going to be a very productive NFL player. And finally, at number 7, the last player I have in Tier 2, I love this guy, and I wish I could have put him higher. Omar Cooper Jr. out of Indiana, 6'1", 200 pounds, smooth, dependable target, consistently finds space in the intermediate area, and he's a guy who plays with such toughness, such heart, always fighting through contact. It looks like a guy who's spoiling for a fight. He looks for contact. He wants to hit somebody. He helps you out in the run game. He's honestly like one of my favorite players. He, like Jarvis Landry. I'm sure you've heard that role or that comp. He's Jarvis Landry with 4.4 speed, which is awesome. Did a great job this year at Indiana. I think he was a bit overlooked. I think a lot of the attention went to Elijah Surratt, but Omar Cooper, I think, is going to be the better NFL player. So he was at number 7. Filling out the rest of my top 10 in Tier 3 are what I call role-specific playmakers. These are players who may project in specific roles, but bring traits, offense's value. 3 of my favorite receivers in this draft. And I'll start with number 8, Deion Burks out of Oklahoma. 5'11", 190 pounds. We're talking about quick twitch playmakers who can threaten defenses vertically and horizontally, while they also generate explosive plays after the catch. This is another guy, just figure out a way to get the ball in his hands and let him go to work. I think coming into the year, if you look at the production numbers, you might say he had a bad year. I think the expectations were higher, especially with John Mateer going to Oklahoma and that new wide open offense that they brought down there. Burks didn't have eye-popping numbers. But once again, I think this is another guy who translates better to the NFL. The traits are there. You put him in the right system with an offensive coordinator who knows how to use him. I think Deion Burks is a better NFL wide receiver than he was in college. And the same could be said about number 9, Zachariah Branch out of Georgia. 5'9", 177 pounds. Not huge, sort of plays the same role of Deion Burks, but he's 2 inches shorter and 13 pounds lighter, so I couldn't put him ahead of Burks. But he's absolutely one of the most dynamic athletes in this class. That is Zachariah Branch, my number 9 receiver. Speed, change of direction ability make him dangerous anytime he touches the ball. And again, almost like Jordan Tyson, you can line him up at the backfield. You can line him up on the outside and say, go outrun the corner. You can line him up in the slot and have him run over the middle, pitching the ball real quick and make one guy miss, and now all of a sudden he's dancing between the hashes. I love Zachariah Branch, the athlete. I can't wait to see what he's able to do at the next level. I hope he puts on a little bit of weight because he is a little slight, but just love the versatility. Couldn't put him outside my top 10. And finally, rounding out the top 10, it's the Indiana receiver that everybody sort of loved, throughout the course of the season. And I think a lot of that has to do with the body type. Elijah Surratt, obviously from Indiana, 6'2", 210 pounds. Produced everywhere he went in college. Division III, Division II, Division I. He is a physical receiver who wins with strength and excellent body positioning. He knows where to put his body in reference to the cornerback. He's great with leverage. He profiles as a dependable possession target with strong hands. Do you guys remember Xavier Restrepo out of out of University of Miami last year? He caught 110 balls for Cam Ward because he knew how to get open, and he knew where to put his body to help his quarterback out. I think Surratt is that with greater physical ability. Restrepo did not make the opening day roster. He was a practice squad player last year. Surratt will be an opening day 53-man roster guy. And again, I think this is a guy who just understands how to get open. He's not going to fly by anybody, so you can't put him past the Brazzles and the Branches and the Burks of the world, but he's going to make a roster. He's got great body type, great hands catcher, reliable receiver. Hey, it's third and medium. We need a guy who can just physically get open, throw the ball near him, and trust this is the guy who comes away with the catch. And Surratt does that. He does that better than most guys. So he won't be drafted as high as the physical freaks of nature, but he's a guy that I think goes day 2 and contributes year 1. A couple of guys I wanted to mention didn't quite crack the top 10, but are going to be really productive, good players at the next level. And like I said, this is a really deep wide receiver draft class. I think Chris Bell out of Louisville is going to be awesome. If he doesn't get hurt, he's definitely in that top 10. Antonio Williams from Clemson, another guy, didn't test great, but he's so smooth, understands how to get open. I think he's going to be a good player at the next level. Jeremy Bernard from Alabama, nothing special. The game is boring, but he just knows how to get open and consistently creates chunk plays, turning 5-yard gains into 12s. And finally, Skylar Bell out of UConn. One of the most interesting receivers, led the nation in receiving yardage, and his yards per catch was ridiculous. Something like 16.8 yards every time he touched the ball. He's a first down plus every time you throw it to him. Yeah, I think we can take that at the next level. Obviously, the level of play is concerning. We're going to see how he does. He was not invited to the Senior Bowl, so that was a little disappointing, but the Senior Bowl was, again, loaded. See what he does at the Pro Day. I don't think he makes it past pick 100, which means he's a day 2 player. All right, before we get out of here, one more thing I thought was worth talking about. Free agency has opened and teams have started spending money. They've started plugging holes and reshaping those depth charts. So suddenly some of those early, easy February mock draft pairings don't make as much sense anymore. So this is the first real draft strategy week of the offseason. I'll give you a few examples, and I think the most glaring one, we start with Kansas City. They have a pick in the top 10. They gave Kenneth Walker a 3-year deal. They brought Travis Kelce back, and I think both of those things tell you a lot right away. So the Kenneth Walker signing wipes out that easy Jeremiah Love to Kansas City connection at number 9, right? And Travis Kelce deciding to come back makes that tight end position a lot less urgent. Maybe that strikes Kenyon Sadiq out of the range at 9. Maybe you don't quite need him as much now. So you're looking at a team whose first round conversation feels a lot more focused on premium spots that still aren't solved. Corner, receiver, maybe just defense in general, but now probably not running back and probably not tight end. So I thought that was the easiest example. But the Raiders may be the clearest example. Now they're picking number 1. They traded Geno Smith away. All right. They signed Tyler Linderbaum to a massive record-breaking deal at center. They added Teron Johnson at nickel corner. They brought in Nakobe Dean at Quay Walker at linebacker. That doesn't erase every need. But I think it absolutely clarifies what they're looking at the top of the board. Who are the top players in the draft? We talked about Sonny Styles, Arvell Reese, the workouts they put on. So you sign Nakobe Dean and Quay Walker, kind of eliminates quarterback or that position, right? You sign Teron Johnson. You're looking at the top of the draft, couple of nickel corners, probably not there. You signed Tyler Linderbaum. Your offensive line was not good. Do we want to take a premium offensive lineman early? We just invested in that position. And they traded away last year's starting quarterback, Geno Smith, to the Jets. Probably going quarterback early, right? So it looks like a team setting the table for quarterback at number 1. They use that extra first rounder at number 14 to either keep building the offense or replace Max Crosby's pass rush impact. But I think the Geno trade is the tell. The Linderbaum is the follow through. It's going to be quarterback Mendoza at 1. Now the Jets, as I just mentioned briefly, they're more interesting today than they were last week because they've been active enough to muddy the waters. They traded for Geno Smith. They added Minkah Fitzpatrick. They signed Joseph Asai. They also brought in defenders Kingsley Enagbar and Demario Davis. So now you've got 2 draft indicators. Number 1, Geno lowers the temperature for forcing a quarterback early. And 2, none of those defensive veteran additions completely fix the pass rush, right? So this sort of, to me, indicates they may go edge early, and they've got that number 2 pick. Another New York team, the Giants, they changed their first-round math as well. They signed Isaiah Likely at tight end. They're going to bring back Jermaine Illuminor at tackle. And probably the biggest signing to me, they signed Tremaine Edmonds at linebacker. Now, that doesn't mean they're done in those spots, but it absolutely changes the way they're going to think about round 1. Tight end, once again, Sadiq probably gets pushed down. Linebacker, Styles probably gets pushed down. Tackle then becomes less urgent. Now you start talking about true impact player at 5 instead of just drafting for a glaring need. And then finally, there's New Orleans, which had one of the more sneaky, revealing starts to free agency. They signed Travis Etienne at running back. Now, this was a spot that a lot of people, myself included, expected them to go younger at running back in the way of Jeremiah Love. Maybe not necessarily Travis Etienne, as they perhaps transition out of their running back there now. They also signed Noah Fant at tight end. They brought in David Edwards at guard. A couple of positions, again, just sort of solidifying. Those are 3 offensive spots that people could have talked themselves into round 1 a month ago, right? Now, maybe not so much. Once you make those moves, you're telling people you probably what you probably aren't drafting, right? And that's why receiver, to me, starts making a lot more sense than it did before this whole tampering window opened. Fant, tight end, ETN, running back, Edwards, guard, wide receiver. Right for the taking. And again, we went through wide receivers in this one. Which one do they like the most? They've got the I call him the other, Olave, Chris Olave. It was him and Garrett Wilson who went the same year. They've got Olave, had some injury history down there. I think it's a concussion issue. But I liked him as a prospect. So there's your one. Add somebody to the other side of the field. Tyson makes the most sense to me, but it's whoever they like. I do want to throw in, before I get out of here, Cleveland Browns as well. You can throw them into this conversation too. They added Boye Mafe, the edge, and they added Brian Cook at safety. So those aren't tiny moves. They don't eliminate defense in the first round entirely, but I do think they take some heat off of those spots and make it easier to justify going offense early. Especially tackle or another premium offensive player sitting there at 6. I think wide receiver obviously makes sense there as well. So that's the point here. Free agency doesn't finish the board, but it absolutely starts steering it a little bit. It tells you which needs are real, which ones just got expensive Band-Aids, and which teams are quietly telegraphing what they want to do in round 1. And that is exactly why next week's show gets a lot more fun, because now money has been spent. Now a few of the holes have been patched. Now we can finally do what we've all been waiting to do: mock draft with context. So that is going to do it for this week's episode of the podcast. If you enjoyed the show, make sure you're following along on YouTube, Spotify, and wherever you get your podcasts. You can always find me on X at RufusP88. If you disagree with any of these rankings, and I know some of you will, let me hear it. Drop me a comment, send a DM, tell me who I missed. If you want to support the show heading into draft season, you can always check out the TDP hoodie in the show description as well. Next week, we're shifting gears into full draft strategy mode. The first wave of free agency will have settled, the board will have started to take shape, and I'll finally be time for our first mock draft episode of the year. Because once the owners start spending money, the real draft conversations begin. I'm Paul Adamczak, and this has been the Draft Podcast, presented by the Gem City Sports Podcast Network. We'll see you next week.